community will be able to restart in person. I think on behalf of Mary-Chelle and myself, but also all the colleagues who have supported us in this adventure, we wanted to share how proud we have been to be working with you in the past 3 years. We wanted to highlight that, you know, from the very beginning, we had insisted being the Resource Group 2 on accountability and inclusion to be an inclusive group. And our mailing list to date is of around 400 colleagues around the world. Among those, of course, we have representatives of YASC IESC members, but also many international and national NGOs who are not necessarily core members of the IESC, but who have been very involved in our work, and in particular networks of local frontline responders who have contributed a lot to our deliberations and to the work that we did. But I also want to recognize, of course, all representatives of the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, representatives of the donors, the clusters who were with us, research institutes and academics, independent consultants who really joined us at key moments over the past 3 years, as well as representatives of the Gender Reference Group of the IESC, representatives of the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Reference Group, and importantly as well, all colleagues working on disability inclusion. Sincerely, we're starting with our thanks to the some 70 colleagues who participated throughout our meetings. Each time we call them on a quarterly basis on average. We can't name everyone, but we're very grateful for all of you who have volunteered to take on some of the work streams and who have advanced our work, our collective work. We've tried over the past 3 years to be as little process heavy as we could and to really focus on what counts, which is support to those of us who are responding and who are in direct contact and having an impact for affected populations in humanitarian crisis. What we've tried to do is really to disseminate widely products, but also raise awareness on accountability and inclusion. You'll all recall, and many of you participated in the webinars that we organized last year in cooperation with PHAP. In total, they attracted some 1,700 professionals, many of them working directly at country and subnational level. The recordings of the webinar, for those who could not listen to them or participate in them, were listened to by more than 2,800 persons to date. What we thought as a lesson learned from these webinars was the huge opportunity they offered to practitioners to compare notes and share their experiences. I want to recognize also that a lot of the work that we have been able to do were thanks to a dedicated coordinator, Tanya Axisa, who really supported us in the first 2.5 years, as well as the colleagues from the IESC Secretariat. They are all almost all online today, and on behalf of Mary-Chelle and I, big thanks. Without you, we would not have been able to make it. We also recognize that while the work on accountability and inclusion and our collective efforts have progressed, much more needs to be done. And we will be today taking the opportunity of this meeting to introduce you to the new co-chairs of the new task force on accountability. Before I go quickly through the agenda, I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping issues. Please do mute your microphones when you do not speak. Please, as usual, use the chat box. We will answer questions and comments during the second part of the meeting, during our Q&A session. And I just wanted to mention that we have enabled the automatic closed captioning for this meeting for those who may require it. This can be activated by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of the screen. The meeting will be recorded and the link shared together with the minutes of the meeting. And now going through the agenda. We will be, I'll pass on the floor now to Mary-Chelle, who will take us through the new IESC structures and the transition. We will provide a final update on RG2 deliverables. Welcome the new co-chairs for the task force on accountability. And then, as I said, have a discussion before going through the AOB and closing remarks. So again, welcome to you all, and Mary-Chelle, over to you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Let's move to the next slide. I understand that people need to leave within the hour, so I will go really fast. You will see there the IESC strategic priorities for 22-23. I think you all have received the document, but the principals have agreed on 5 strategic priorities, and they are the same as of the current period. They are all still relevant, and they are a good way to frame the work of the Interagency Standing Committee. And also, we have all agreed that the primary focus of the Interagency Standing Committee is on field impact. So while there is emphasis on thematic issues and normative work, it's very important that this really has an impact on the ground. So for the priorities, again, the areas are preserving the humanitarian space, protection, AAP, gender, and climate. Climate being maybe a new one. And at the same time, there is a number of enabling priorities defined to be addressed for the system to deliver effectively, being those localization, IDP review, the nexus, and financing the nexus in particular. And the OPAC members, they also request to do not forget leave no one behind as one of the cross-cutting issues, but so far we don't have much clarity on how this is going to be brought forward by the system. So you will see in that slide on the organigram that there are some small shifts. So the deputy, you have the IESC there, and then you have the deputies group that has been now formalized under the leadership of the new SG in OCHA. The first item on the agenda will be looking at PSCA review as well as the IDP review concept note, and they will also be looking at issues such as racism and racial discrimination, climate, humanitarian financing, and cash, and they will be coordinating with the grand bargain on cash and humanitarian financing. The EDG, the Emergency Directors Group, will continue to focus on operations, and they will continue working on, the L3s mostly, and how to scale up in those countries where we need to scale up the response. And then the OPAC, of course, will continue the policy work, but with the idea of having less policy, more practice, system changes from policy to action, field impact. This is the new motto. And then, of course, then the task forces, that they are the ones that will move forward the priorities and enabling priorities. So again, preserving humanitarian space, focusing on the counterterrorism agenda and the BAA, protection with building on external review, delivering on the indicators, AAP, finishing the field testing tools developed by the RG2, by all of you, and finalizing the work of the task force that that was just completed. In localization, we need to again translate guidance into action. How do we address the barriers, et cetera, and then the nexus, financing the nexus. And then there are a number of entities there, and this discussion is not yet closed, so there is a need for closer examination and reflection on the 4 entities. So this will be happening in the course of 2022. So just to update a little bit and also introduce the new co-chairs on where we left it last time we met. So our last meeting was in early December 21. It seems that it was yesterday, but actually it was several months ago. And we discussed with all of you what could be the priorities for the work on accountability and inclusion over 22 and 23. And I just wanted to recap on that very rich discussion and also introduce this to the new chairs as food for thought for the forthcoming work. So you will see there that one of the points was the importance to become really inclusive of affected people in all their diversities. By fostering people-centered approaches and through a shift in power or a change of culture. So you mentioned approaches to be less paternalistic and to see participation as a rights-based approach. The importance of cross-sectoral issues and intersectionality were mentioned, as well as the need for more interlinkages between AAP, PSEA, and inclusion. Several of you also mentioned the complaint and feedback mechanism that is only as good as the way in which it's inclusive and designed through participatory means with people in all of their diversities. So we were asked by all of you to make more efforts to verify that the complaints and feedback mechanisms are genuinely inclusive, linguistically, geographically, technologically accessible to all, etc., etc. Also, they should not be the only way to include, engage, and shift power. We need to have a feedback mechanism, yes, but they cannot be, they are not sufficient to change the culture around PSEA. So there are many other elements that need to be put in place. Also, it was mentioned that that are many challenges about implementing the community feedback mechanism, and we are very aware of that, including the need for the UNCT or the ECT to provide funding. It's also important that data is shared of course, in a protected way, and it's analyzed. There are gaps in skills to do this. There is sometimes lack of will. Sometimes there is interference of politics, or the fact that in some contexts, community leaders engaging in CA are government nominated. And so the variety of designations for similar mechanisms represent another hurdle for colleagues on the ground. Just to finalize, some other participants mentioned the need to better understand the barriers hampering the reporting and escalation of complaints, and we need to move away from merely complaint mechanisms to a more regular engagement with communities. Finally, there were comments about that we have enough guidance, but now we have to really put it in place on the ground. The focus should be now into validating or improving the relevance of those guidance, usability, and those being responsive or sensitive to age, gender, diversity, etc., etc. And finally, it's important to involve more local actors and entities, really focusing on ground-up validation and for more engagement with clusters at global level and also at field level. Leadership is important as well as the need to ensure value for money. So all those ideas and comments guided the presentation that we made to the OPAC on the 27th of January 22, when we were asked to propose potential priorities for the new task force that will replace the current results group 2. And the OPAC members expressed broad support and noted that the coming months will be critical to launch AAP tools across humanitarian operations and to refine them. And now we have another huge operation in our doorstep. So we also learned that an annual report on AAP to the principals will be prepared to discuss barriers to AAP and views captures from affected communities. So more details on this discussion are available in the report of the OPAC meeting that Isabel has circulated in preparation for this meeting, and that we will recirculate with the note from this meeting. And so with this, I hand over back to Bernadette. Over to you.
Thank you. And maybe just conscious of the fact that the task force co-chairs may have to leave because of other engagements at around 4 p.m. Geneva. If you don't mind, Isabel, could we move to the slides introducing?
Oops. Voilà.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So just a recap and building from what Mary-Chelle was saying, the nomination of the new co-chairs for all task forces was finalized a couple of weeks ago. The nomination process allowed interested organizations to step forward, and in view of the fact that there were more candidates than seats available for all new task forces, the YAS Secretariat had been tasked by the OPAC to develop a set of criteria, including the imperative of balancing UN and non-UN representation in the co-chair arrangements. The task force 2 on accountability will going forward be co-chaired by the CHS Alliance, IFRC and WFP. Congratulations to you, Tanya, Alex, and David, who are representing respectively the three organizations. And if I may, I'd like to invite you for a few introductory remarks. And if I may also invite you to put on your cameras. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Bernadette and Mary-Chelle, and hi to everyone on the line. Always a good turnout for Results Group 2. It really is just to say thank you. It's definitely an honour to join with WFP and IFRC to co-chair the new Accountability Task Force. The CHS Alliance has been a really active member of RG2. We've followed, we've engaged, we've delivered, and I think at times also challenged some of the work of RG2. So we're definitely not taking lightly the new role of the co-chair for the new task force. I think it's a reminder to us all that we can't take accountability to affected people too lightly. It really is the sort of guiding force for all of our work in our organizations in terms of how do we deliver, spend our money, work with partners, align our organizational cultures so that we can have the means and the mechanisms that we can be held to account by the people for our actions. I think there's been some really excellent momentum created through this Results Group 2. I think really got to kind of the core of some of the challenges that face us, because this isn't easy stuff, and really want to give really sincere and fantastic appreciation to Bernadette and Mary-Chelle for your fantastic leadership of this group. It's really been an active, listening and responsive group. And particularly Bernadette, we're pleased that you're not going too far as the co-chair of the Protection Task Force. So we want to stay very closely connected to you and see where those linkages can be made, as well as continue getting your expertise. So there's still plenty to do, even though there's the momentum there. There's some from the last Results Group 2, you've given us some big challenges to take forward. You certainly have the commitment of the CHS Alliance, and with that, the 162 members of the Alliance, some of which are on this group, and really look forward, David, and I think Frank from the IFRC to be working with you, and really looking forward to the task. So thank you, and a special thanks, Bernadette and Mary-Chelle, for your leadership.
probably I go next. That's the order of here, the as it listed here. So my name is Frank Moorhauer. I'm the director for the National Society Policy and Knowledge Development Department at the IFRC. So great to see you, Tanya, to come back closer, also to work together there. And I'm looking also forward to work with you, David, on this file. It might be a bit surprise for many of you that I'm here. You might have read a different name at the beginning, which was to be Pascal, our director of operations. But Pascal is taking up at mid-April a new task within the IFRC, so I was asked to step in. Some of you might say the IFRC tried to get in by putting Pascal forward, and now you've got me. So I'm very sorry about this one, but I will do my best to be adequate here. And the good news is that Alexander will be staying here and supporting me in this task. And you know, those of you who have heard me talking in the OPAC, where I'm also sitting in, one of the key messages is for me is the localization agenda. As Red Cross, Red Crescent, that is, we are born from the localization agenda. And for me, it's going to be very interesting to see how are we connecting the accountability agenda and the localization agenda more stronger together, because I think they are parts and parcel of it, or two sides of the same coin. So that is for sure one of my main angles. I would like to take this and also to introduce this into our capacities of our national societies or of the local actors, that they are the ones also bringing this in. So that is for sure something where I will be extremely happy to contribute to, and I'm looking forward to work with you, David and Tanya, together on this one. I'm a bit scared if I will be able to walk in these big shoes. Marichelle and Bernadette have put forward towards us there, whether we can do this. But I'm pretty confident that all three of us will be able to do this. And we three are nothing without the people in the group and relying on their good continuous work. Thank you very much.
Very good. So let me come in now. Thanks, Tanya and Frank, and on behalf of Samir Wanmali, who couldn't make it today, we really look forward to working with both of you and on this challenge of moving into a task force mode in a co-chair arrangement involving three parties, which I think nicely complement each other. I'm David Cotrud, and I think many of you see me in the context of the OPAG. I represent WFP in that context. And today I'm just standing in from Samir because he is on the front lines in Ukraine as part of the initial response team. He's temporary in that role. And so he'll be plugging in as soon as he can. He could not today, but very happy to join this and be here at the inception. I'd like to just echo the thanks to UNICEF, HCR, and all the RG2 memberships over the last few years who have accomplished so much. And of course, it's been a real personal commitment that we recognize with Bernadette and Marichelle, which is so greatly appreciated. We, of course, this is not some sort of corporate merger or hostile takeover. We all know this is going to be very collegial, and it's a smooth transition. And I think in that regard, you'd be aware of the contribution that WFP made with IFRC in late in the RG2 process last year in that third work stream that you were introducing on the other slide briefly, that task team, and we will certainly want to build on that as part of the continuity that we would see in taking this forward in a task force mode. This WFP looked carefully at the co-chair openings for the task forces, and you would notice we only put forward for one, which was this one. This is in part because the AAP is very prominent now in our new strategic plan that was just launched in January. It will be good for the next 5 years. So we're going to be investing in this area. You're all aware we have a new protection and accountability policy, and our board is highly engaged in supporting that. In other words, we think that this attention within WFP itself, given our extensive activities in the field should allow us to contribute very significantly to the discussions under the task force arrangements. And of course, we're going to be happy to help build on the work we did with IFRC last year, but also contribute whatever we're going to be learning as we work further on issues that have already been raised today, such as CFM, for example. What I would say, and some of you may have heard me in the OPAG context, what we want to, while we really appreciate that IFRC will bring like the localization perspective, what we will be probably making sure that we don't lose is this attention to inclusion. You can't have AAP without inclusion. We all know that in this group, but inclusion has kind of dropped off in profile in a way in OPAG, and we made issue of that in some of the strategic discussions in the late last year. So we will want to preserve that perspective in our discussions in the task force, even if it's not formally recognized in the title of the task force. And we think that this, and this is very much part of our strategic plan as well, a kind of inclusion agenda is there complementing the AAP attention. So we'll be working on making sure that we advocate in that regard as we advance on AAP. The leadership point, the fact that I'm here today and will be connecting with Samir very closely. He actually is my deputy in my division. So that will ensure, at least at the OPAG level, there'll be that leadership connection. But we're very excited, and we feel it's very timely that we also have a principal statement on AAP coming out right about this time. And we'll all want to keep that alive and leverage that to keep the principal level engaged on this issue. There's so much work to be done, as we all know, going forward in AAP. So that, I think, will be a helpful instrument and help on that leadership front, which is we would agree with, which we saw on the previous slide. Let's see, maybe just in closing as we move forward, we haven't met yet as a triumvirate here or a triple co-chair arrangement. We will do so as early as possible in April. That will be Samir from our side. And of course, we look forward to figuring out this way of working that will realize the vision of launching a task force approach that OPAG has had. And I've talked obviously extensively with Valerie Guarnieri on that. She feels very strongly we need to move policy to practice, link to the field. We will, of course, look at ways to do that. One of the things that we have been thinking about is how the task force might also be helping on replicating best practice, capturing best practice, replicating best practice in the form of almost a kind of help desk type of function, facilitating that type of function when we have a breaking emergency, such as the Ukraine, or when we have issues that might be arising in other environments. And so we might want to think about how we handle that referral or help desk function potentially, because there probably will be a demand as we start to position ourselves closer to field support, and we'll need to cater for that. And we do this, we all do this in different ways, but in WP, of course, we do a lot of this that we might have some practices that we could bring to bear through the task force, because the task force should be, and that's Valerie's vision, should be a bit of a different approach than we've had to date. And we have so much to draw from fantastic normative work that has been created and is near to finishing, and tools that have been generated as well. So now the issue is application, practice. But as we do that, we'll be learning further and refining these instruments, and we'll want to have that catered for in the task force environment. So we'll see how we can do that as well. So let me stop there. These were just to be, I know, today introductory remarks. And again, thanks for all the efforts to get us a very firm starting point, and really look forward to working with all of you on behalf of WFP going forward in the new configuration. Thank you.
Many thanks, Tanya, Frank, and David. And Frank, apologies, I wasn't sure you were going to be able to join us today. Thank you for your very encouraging and forward-looking remarks. We're very happy, sincerely, to hand over to you. We know that you will bring all these efforts forward, and you can count on UNICEF and UNHCR to remain active members of the future task force. I see now that maybe before we go back to our agenda, I see that there are comments from Valentina and Sudanshu on inclusion, the importance of inclusion and the localization agenda. Would you like to maybe react to those?
I'm happy to in a way it's just an agreement, but I think Sudanshu, thank you. You always hold us rightly to account. That accountability, when we're talking about accountability to affected people, that's at the very core of the localization means, and we can't separate the two. So also it's good to see IFRC taking the co-chair with the work that they've done before on the localization, but I know that you're gonna hold us to account and an accountability to Task Force Sudanshu on this issue. And certainly I think the issue around the inclusion and fostering inclusion is, again, we can't even separate the two. The two are so interlinked around accountability and inclusion. We can't de-link. But how we do that, that's what we've got to, how we do that better, and what's the mechanisms for doing that, and how do we put that and make it more meaningful. That's the challenge for us, I think.
Thank you very much, Tanya. And I should also say that, of course, there are the IESC efforts, but also, the work that's also ongoing within the Grand Bargain. And we've worked very closely with colleagues as much as we could. Maybe that's also something going forward that you may further, because a lot of efforts can be better strengthened if we get them more coordinated, with more exchange of information. The co-chairs of the participatory revolution of workstream of the Grand Bargain have been active supporters and participants in our meetings, and maybe more can be done going forward. I don't see any more comments now in the chat. Would it be fine if we maybe go back to a summary of where we stand in terms of our core deliverables? Also importantly, because Tanya, Frank, and David, that will be for you and colleagues to take forward some of the unfinished work and taking over from us. So maybe if you don't mind, Ben, please come in for the final update on the accountability framework, the results tracker, and the complaints and feedback mechanisms. I will then take the floor again. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks, everyone. So first and foremost, since we are also thanking everyone, definitely thanking the strong involvement of the memberships and the co-chair, and also Tanya Axisa at the time for the development of the accountability framework and the results tracker. Now, both of those are basically being rolled out and tested as we had provisional release with OPAG. And the main countries that we've been focusing on responses are Gaziantep in the Syria cross-border, Bangladesh at national level and in Cox's Bazar, Somalia, Ethiopia, and Lebanon. Those are where we are now planning or have delivered some workshops and engagement, institutional and technical, on all those tools. So just a quick update on that. Gaziantep, Syria cross-border response had their workshop last year. Since then, we've continued the progress there, the country-led progress based on AAP draft action plan, and also engagement on the results tracker, and they continuing this work also with bringing it back to the humanitarian leadership there. For Bangladesh workshops, we're planned in May in Cox's Bazar and then Dhaka, under the leadership of the RCO cluster and the Cox ICG, which is the intersectorial group co-led by UNHCR and IOM. So the development of the AAP country level action plan and with the framework and the results tracker will be strongly part of those workshops. There's also quite a strong link there for with the humanitarian and development nexus, which is very interesting as it also comes up in other countries. And so we've already started the technical and institutional engagement at the national level and in Cox. Now, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Lebanon are the three other countries that we're also working with for those workshops, supported by the IC in the second quarter of this year, noting that various AAP capacities exist in those countries, and we're working with the UNCTs on their timeline and their priorities as well. What I would say about the results tracker is that it's continuously being strengthened with the leadership of the CHSA to better serve our field colleagues through this process at the global level with the global sources engagement, the field testing and learning. And so that means that both of those tools are used in those countries in various ways and gradually brought through the AAP workshops with the humanitarian leadership and broader humanitarian community. But it's also important to note that there's also a little bit of testing and engagement and sensitization outside of those workshops, and particularly for the results tracker, which has a lot of work to be, not a lot of work, but it has some work to be embedded into system and be useful to inform decision making at a more technical level as well. And obviously, as we focus on those country-led workshops, we also introduce and promote the global portal on inclusion and accountability, and the use of it, and also the service directory that WFP has worked to support the development of and will continue to support for localization and populating. Now, sorry, just one second. Yeah, so the CFM, also part of bringing this back to the field. However, I have a few updates here. So the first one is, again, thanks there for the co-lead with Alex Hillman from IOM, the interagency PSEA coordinator, and Mariska, also really useful. So what we had for the first one is the participatory design output, which was led by UNHCR and CDAC. That work stream has finished their work. It's to develop those minimum operational requirements for including communities in the design of CFMs. So they produced with the RG2 contributing organizations a couple of two main complementary outputs to guide increased participation in feedback mechanisms. It's a two-part reference document focused on strengthening the sample questions used as part of the multi-sector needs assessments. So it's really focused on what to ask affected communities to ensure preferences and needs are collected and understood, and that they are used towards the design of inclusive feedback systems and mechanisms. So that output will be shared and endorsed with OPAG, and we'll follow that up so that it's distributed widely. The second one was a tool for all sensitive complaint, and that was mainly led by the CHSA with our support and wider consultation. So for that, there was a conversation that was hosted at the end of February to see a way forward for this pocket card tool. Consultation included the ISCP SEA Championship, the GPC protection, global protection, child safeguarding, the ISC discrimination racism working group, and the gender reference group. And so that consultation was very important because it was about whether such a tool would support, would it be an asset for our humanitarian work, and what process should be followed to have buy-in from relevant actors to create and draft this simple tool. So out of that came a general consensus that this pocket card objectives of breaking down the silos and simplifying reporting for frontline workers is valuable. But the simple card was not necessarily adequate format and the way forward. So definitely recognizing that silos must be broken. But if that's the case, it's more a strategic decision-making level and not necessarily accomplished by this technical guidance card. Also that we had to be, careful about the feasibility of keeping such cards up to date and ensuring accuracy and do no harm with their distribution. So in short, the CHS Alliance developed a one-pager to expand these results, which will allow for transition on the next steps to be handed over to the AAP task force in 2022. Last but not least, the data standards and principle. So there was quite a lot of review process for a draft package that was developed focusing on the main steps of the data cycle in feedback mechanisms. So to ensure that we would have common standards and principles for collecting, sharing, and actioning feedbacks and complaints data. So what came out of that is in this draft is there's 10 operational guiding principles, data standards, which are minimum actions, and 3 core examples template to support them. So as we go forward, the focus will be on testing in priority one of the core tools of this package, which is a logbook, which includes taxonomy, so the way of classifying data so that we can see how we're able to share and follow up on some of those actions better. A link to this is the CBCM work. So IOM is finalizing the proposal to address the findings and recommendation of the ISC external review to revise the ISC joint SEA complaints handling approach, which is also called the CBCM. So the proposal will be circulated soon and outlines inclusive and transparent process whereby all the ISC members will be invited to engage and contribute to reviewing the ISC joint SEA complaints handling approach. And that's important because it was very much, part of the co-lead process here to ensure that there's links and cohesion with these two, with all of these other streams of work. And if you just allow me to conclude as part of this work, a couple of 2 takeaways that came really strongly through these different streams and the consultation with a lot of colleagues across the globe and different responses and agencies and organization is the need to have common language and principles that we're communicating and understanding in the same way what we mean and how this is accessible for a lot of practitioners. And also, which was the part of what we wanted to do as well, is to have stronger joint feedback mechanism at a country level that can cater for all feedback, including sensitive complaints, which means a very strong articulation between general feedback and more sensitive complaints. And on that note, I will give back to Bernadette. Thank you.
You would think that after 2.5 years, I would be able to switch on my microphone, but no. Thanks a lot, Ben. There are actually reactions and questions in the chat related to the complaints and feedback mechanisms. I propose that maybe we come back to them during the Q&A session. Let me first maybe update on the other 2 deliverables of RG2. So first, we thought it would be important to give you an update on the global portal on accountability and inclusion. You remember that this portal was launched in October 2020 with a big thanks to ALNAP and UNICEF, who have been the driving forces behind it. The aim of the global portal was really to aim at collecting and displaying in one single place resources related to AAP, PSEA, and inclusion. And bear with me, we wanted to share with you a few statistics because I think they talk to the potential of the portal that will continue to be available to the community, despite the fact that the resource group 2 is transitioning out. So since the launch of the portal in October 2020, there have been 11,500 visitors who browse more than 40,000 pages, as you can see on the slides. Most of the users originated from Europe and the US, but the portal was also visited by some 3,000 professionals in Bangladesh, more than 700 from Yemen, more than 600 from countries like Turkey, Kenya, Ethiopia, and also Iraq with more than 400 visitors. So really what we see is a lot of potential in the portal continuing to be a single resource library for all of us. Over the lifespan of the portal up to today, over 3,500 documents have been downloaded, and they comprise policies, guidance documents on AAP, inclusion, PSE, but also examples of good practices and also exchanges through blogs. So a very dynamic resources and tool for all of us to use. As you can see on the slide here, I mean, we'll share the slides with you, but the most read documents were the ISC commitments on AAP and PSEA, as well as the core humanitarian standards, and also a good practice on the inclusion of persons with disabilities during COVID. So in this connection, I'd like to highlight that these documents I've just mentioned were at some point highlighted on the portal's homepage, and that's something to remember. They were maybe consulted more and downloaded more because they were featured at some point prominently. So please, as I said, do continue to consult and feed the portal going forward. We will certainly do so from our side as well. And finally, to complete our updates on PSEA, I'm very sorry that Wendy, our colleague from the ISC Secretariat and OCHA, could not be with us today, but we will be sharing a summary of where we are at on the PSEA deliverables under RG2 with the summary note of this meeting. In the meantime, I think Marichel mentioned it earlier, but while PSEA will continue to be relevant across all task forces, and certainly for the task force on accountability. It will also continue to be a standing agenda item for the principals of the IESC during their meetings. But the change between how we have worked on PSEA until now and how it will be dealt with in the future is, as Marichal said, that PSEA will be now dealt with and followed up on by the deputies group. They will first and foremost oversee the implementation of the new multi-year IESC PSEA strategy, which should be endorsed next Monday during the deputies group meeting. I just also want to highlight here, for those of you who may not yet know it, that the multi-year IESC PSEA strategy is very much aligned with the championship priorities. And for the first time, we're very happy that the PSEA champion for the IESC is an NGO. It's World Vision International this year. And this is very good, with lots of work that's already ongoing. So I think, having said that, I think we can maybe take down the PowerPoint presentation now, Isabel. And I suggest that we continue with the Q&A session. And if you allow me, I'd like to maybe invite, I think, Sudhanshu, Yue, if you would like to come in with your questions, please feel free to do so.
I've already shared my comment through the chat. I could just repeat that. No, because I often seen the complaints mechanism, the accountability mechanisms, when we are overwhelmed with the response, then it becomes the last priority, last and lost both priority. No, and I think that's why it's a mindset which we require to develop at systems and procedures during peacetime. No, so that from the very beginning, means most of the operations, of course, happen in southern countries. No, where when you set up. Of course, complaints mechanism is an important tool for accountability, but complaint term is very disempowering in the southern context, no? And here, because mostly you have a hierarchy, power hierarchy, and that doesn't give confidence to powerless people to talk against the powerful people, supposedly also those who control aid and who make decisions, even something is going wrong against them. I have seen in many contexts that complaint boxes were found empty, though there were challenges in the implementation. And also, I have seen that often these systems were set up far from the community. No, so I think a lot of thinking is required, not only having a complaint mechanism in place, but the procedure, and that has to be monitored. The effectiveness of the system, that has to be monitored, and a lot of effort should go to give confidence to the community that they can freely and frankly use that. If not, then we'll be just setting it up for us, not for empowering the community, not getting. And when we talk about flexible funding and all that, and for all of that, we need to hear from the communities. And how would we hear unless we have really given, forget about the community, even the local actors like us, we feel that we are heard but not listened. What I meant is that at times we are given platform to speak up, but when it's time to make decisions, it's sidelined, and decisions are made by those who really make decisions according to their preference. So I think this is two-way system where if you are listening and if you're not then following what you have listened, then also the actor should also be held responsible. Over.
Sudhanshu, I think we've just lost you.
No, I think I just said over. No, I've said what.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think you will have a lot of support with what within the group with what you just said, and I think you've just highlighted what we discussed in December, and where we really reached an agreement that this is really the part of the accountability work that we really, I mean, that we would want, or we would recommend the task force to focus on going forward. It's really there where we pass the baton on to you, Tanya and David and colleagues, because we have, I think, a common realization and agreement that we need to better tackle all the existing barriers, and we're very far from having sufficiently worked around those and in finding solutions. So thank you very much, Sudhanshu. Tanya, David, Ben, if you would like to come in. Anyone else? Yes, David.
So, well, thank you, Sudhanshu, for sort of setting a tone for the task force to hopefully pick up on in terms of frank interventions and the call for creating space for voices like yours, and so that we do have those type of discussions, which, as Bernadette just said, would build on what had been transpiring in the RG2 issues. So that type of frank exchange, I think, will be something we'll want to cultivate a proper environment for. One thing that I didn't mention earlier that I think will be a challenge for this area of work, and it's been cited before, will be with in the HC retreat, by the way, which was our link to leadership last fall, and I was pleased to have participated in that, is that we will have a lot of expectation management as well in a year where we're going to have overwhelming need on the ground that we will get a better understanding for, but we will all face limiting resources to respond to that. And so we'll, I think, probably have to, that has not been set as a priority, but I think that will be a reality that will creep into the priorities. And then maybe we didn't reference it today, but just to recognize, as we, I think, all do as co-chairs, that the OPEG has recently cleared, or is in the process of finalizing and clearing, the priorities for the task forces going forward. And I think they had a very rich feedback in that regard. So we have been looking through that. And we'll, marry that up with what we've heard today about how far RG2 has gotten to and what is being handed over. But those priorities are also something that we will be receiving and taking forward. Over.
Thank you very much, David. Are there any other? Yes, Ben?
Yeah, just to mention that a lot of the points that were mentioned by Sudhanshu have and keep coming up around feedback mechanisms. And a lot of the work and the tools and approaches in all of the RG2 tools that are now ISC tools are about ensuring that there are clear links between the performance of all of those tools and systems towards what you're saying, and also strong adaptation in the field, and that agility to be people-centered, not like completely square when we come to tools and imposing tools for everyone, and just trying to figure that out in terms of the country level experience, but also how does it fit into the decision-making processes at a country level. And that's very much part of the AAP framework. It's very much part of the prospects for the results tracker. and also some links and outputs of consensus building amongst practitioners through the work on CFA. Over.
Thank you very much, Ben. I'm sorry, I don't see hands. Are there any other colleagues who would like to come in with questions or comments to us, the collective us, outgoing co-chairs and new co-chairs?
Look like Uwe's got his hand up there.
Yes, please come in.
Yeah, hi,
Uwe.
this is Uwe from Care International. I was on the call of the AAP working group in Poland today, and a little bit disappointed that we didn't have a lot of participation there today. And, you know, which led me also to the comment that I put already in the chat that, you know, this is the type of crisis where I think while I appreciate that we need to, you know, pilot test things, but something like the results tracker, if we really believe in that, maybe in the light form, you know, we need something like that. We need a collective effort. This is probably a crisis, unfortunate to say, but, you know, probably it is, where at least in the beginning, money is not a question or not such a big question as it may be in other locations, in another crisis. I cannot really see, you know, why we would have not adequate AAP capacity on the ground with strong coordination. We're struggling already with a more coordinated effort to make sure that, you know, we provide the guidance also to, in this case, Polish NGOs for them to understand what is good enough, what is a good enough approach to accountability, you know, what to start with, you know, to see opportunities for collective action. Not that we have necessarily be a good example in other locations all the time for collective action, but anyways, and you know that we see a multitude of initiatives that are certainly, you know, going in the right direction, but could be much more efficient and effective if well supported and well coordinated. So I think we need to really step up collectively for this crisis in the various locations. In Romania, I'm not even sure whether there is an AAP working group, things like that. That's just not, I think, acceptable anymore, given all the high level commitments that we just heard about. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Uwe, and also in response to Megan. So let me come in here because I do not see any UNHCR colleague online. Just to
We lost you, Bernadette.
Okay. I'm not sure what Bernadette was going to mention. I see one hand up, but this is Uwe. Is this the new hand or an old hand?
Sorry, old.
Okay.
Valentina had also put her hand up, but
Oh,
I don't know
Mulu.
if she...
I can see Mulu there. Mulu, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mulu Hrenya from HIAS, and really appreciate the work and the leadership that the group has done over the years to get these resources out to the community. I was going to ask a question around resources because resources are issues in certain crisis situation where AAP is pushed to the last, to the back burner. So how much advocacy are we doing with donors to make sure that that's not the case, and demanding actually implementing partners that when there are proposals that do not include that, they would not be approved, because that is the incentive for the implementing partners to do it that way. Because all the time when we are asked to cut budget, then as you can imagine, M&E and AAP kind of come at the last. But then there are kind of situations like Uwe said, cases where there are resources, but we're not ready to use those resources to really be prepared. In the previous organization I used to work in the past, there was something that we used to call the office in the box. For a large scale emergency, you have to have a set of things that you have to run with. So while the portal has all the resources in the world, I mean, it's the best kind of thing that was done. It might also make people get lost the first time, especially local NGOs who are probably responding for the first time. Is there a way? I think this is probably the future. Like as we develop this, like are there ways so that we can package these things in a more user-friendly way to show that these are the minimum, like anyone who goes out for the first to deploy it in an emergency and a crisis, this is the office in the box thing that you have to go with. So I think those are the kind of things like, how do we make this more friendly and especially I'm looking at that local partners where they have to start from scratch in this kind of crisis. And you can imagine how challenging it would be to think about like running around responding to the basic needs and thinking about these things might be a stretch. So I just wanted to kind of comment on that. But again, thank you very much for all the work that you've done, and also looking forward to continue working with the new leaders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mulu. I don't know if Bernadette is back, but yes, you are back there. So I think we had a question from Mulu on resources that maybe David or Tanya might want to respond. And then Bernadette, you were saying something about UNHCR.
Yeah, so if I may, so yeah, I wanted to respond on the AAP capacity and coordination in the context of the refugee response in countries neighboring Ukraine. So just to confirm that, unfortunately, that could not be avoided, but there is an ongoing meeting, and we will share with you for your future participation. There is an ongoing meeting at the regional level that discusses actually coordination structures, capacities in the 6 countries neighboring Ukraine right now. And UNHCR has taken the decision to formalize an accountability and inclusion working group, if you will. Of course, the operational response should remain at the country level, and so there will be AAP coordination groups, such as the one that was just mentioned in Poland, but they are also happening in other countries with focal points that you can also contact. But also I just wanted to mention that, so the same, if you will, coordination or for information sharing will take place at the regional level every week on Fridays at about this time. And also, so I will share with you, make sure that we share with the mailing list the meeting invites. And also wanted to say that UNHCR will welcome to its portal, again, resources and exchange of information on AAP in particular, but also all issues of inclusion, and so information on that to follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Anyone wants to come back on the question from Mulu on resources for AAP, David or Tanya?
No, maybe I could just come in on it was prompted by Mula's, but also kind of Uwe's and sort of links as well to Sudhanshu's comments earlier. I think the challenge, and we've seen it through this AAP results group, is how much is AAP the tools and the mechanisms and the feedback and complaints, and how much is it the kind of it's the way of operating, it's a way of working that puts people at the center. And the challenge for us all is in that peacetime work to be able to build our organizations, build our ways of operating around a people-centered approach. In terms of the mindset, but also, I forget who said it earlier, but that agility to be able to get out of the boxes and change and adapt based on what people need. And that's what we and we see it in the disasters, because there's that kind of cookie cutter approach. And then there's also that we should be building all of our ways of kind of operating and seeing an organizational mechanisms that can build in that response aspect. We are going to be really tested, I think, in the Ukraine response again. And the challenge is to us all, and I think this as the community around this ISE results group 2, is that we're not also reinventing the wheel. A lot of these tools exist. We have the new results tracker, but a reminder, we do have a core humanitarian standard that the sector has committed to and outlines what the expectations are. We do have a number of learnings of feedback and complaint mechanisms. I don't think the challenge is to reinvent new ones. We've got to make sure, as Sudhanshu says, they're contextualized and used, but also it's a collective mindset for us to not kind of reinvent, but try and really bed in those principles right from the start of how we're going to treat people, how we're going to measure ourselves against that throughout. So we're going to get tested on that through this response, the Ukraine response, for sure.
Bernadette, back to you.
I'm happy to leave you to chair until the end. I don't know, did colleagues want to come in again? I see an hand. Christy.
Hi, everyone. But first, I really just want to thank Meritxell and Bernadette. I've been joining this RG2 for quite a number of years now in 2 different organizations, and this has been, your leadership is really incredible. Oh, where's the camera? I have to look here. And I just want to really thank you for being such really awesome women leaders in the results group too. So just jumping in on the resources, because I'm from IOM and we do. I just have to confirm that it is a struggle as regards AAP on resources, but there's also one thing that maybe we can the next not results group, but the AAP task force can also look into is how we can raise the profile of AAP more at the leadership level, as well as there are tools out there. We have the accountability inclusion portal is quite helpful, actually. I don't know if some of you are using it, but we do, and we actually house it in our AAP platform, and we for our IOM staff to be able to click on the portal to get more tools. But we do need tools for our leaders in order to equip them to be able to really advocate for resources on AAP. And so just throwing it out there, because this is also linked to the efforts that we have in IOM on now shifting to leadership engagement and strengthening that. Yeah, over to you. Thanks.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, maybe we can pass to the final remarks.
Can hi, this is Catherine. I'm with the Ready Initiative and Johns Hopkins, and I'm just really struck by that last comment. And you know, I think like it's clear from the comments and elsewhere, like you know, clearly like the continuation of developing tool after tool after tool is not something we necessarily want to do. But it does strike me that there is a bit of a gap in this kind of internal leadership level, engagement in AAP. And, so what is it that this group can do to kind of focus on that gap, and what kind of recommendations can be put forward at an organizational level, whether that's, some organizations have gender champions within their organization to make sure that gender is incorporated throughout. Like, to what degree is that happening with AAP, internally, and what can we recommend organizations do to kind of institutionalize AAP a little bit better, but in a way that isn't, as was said before, like a tick box kind of approach.
Thank you so much. And I think this is a very good segue. I don't know, David and Tanya, if you want to respond to her and to Christy and do your final concluding remarks, and then Bernadette and I will close the meeting.
Okay, well, I can start up on that. There has to the last speaker is exactly right. There has to be a certain amount of internal advocacy in different groups. As I said, WFP felt confident to offer to take on this leadership role in this task force because we just have launched a strategic plan where AAP is got a high prominence, as agreed with our board. That means our management, all of us, will be held accountable for AAP specifically, explicitly. Also, that strategic plan, by the way, has a guiding principle being people-centered. This is all new stuff for a big UN agency like ourselves. And of course, we're armed with tools like the protection and accountability policy, and we've taken some of the lessons there, like, for example, helping manage risk for affected populations and communities as a conceptual starting point, and very interesting thinking that we've tried to inject last year into the RG2 as we learn, this different approach. So I think that's just an example of what we could look at in terms of trying to promote that internal advocacy of the different agencies to get that higher profile, more corporate accountability to governing structures and so on. Then there is, as this is a task force that we're embarking on, we will have to start to think about how we link closer to the leadership on the ground in all its different forms. And I mentioned the HC retreat last fall. And there, it was quite heartening to see how prominent this issue was, how they embraced it. They were full of ideas and receptive to what was being offered, which was a lot of what RG2 had been promoting. At the same point, same token, they came back with things they needed from us to make this work on the ground. There's resources, there's agency commitment, there's interoperability of CFM, there's what to do about managing expectations with affected communities and peoples. All of this came up in that exchange. In other words, we need to also listen to leadership at the country level if we're to operate as a task force, is one of my impressions that we can work with now as we start to lean forward with the field. Now, the idea, again, the vision in going with a task force approach, as with, really championed by our OPAG co-chairs, was to put policy and tools into practice and not, spend more time developing more policies and tools. But as we do that, as I said earlier, there'll be a certain amount of feedback loops and learning best practices. And we'll be, wanting to see how we can replicate in different environments. There will also be these challenges that will emerge in the operational context, Ukraine being a case in point just now. And I don't know, but we might want to explore, once the task force gets going, about how we could leverage the other interagency mechanisms like the emergency directors group that probably don't give this priority in their work with operations and working on operational bottlenecks and priorities. So we can look at how we can also, as we work now in a task force mode, get closer to those that are working on operational coordination and promoting again some of the things and the tools and approaches we are working on. The last point I would say is that I was just meant to come and, on behalf of Samir, listen in. And of course, I thought this was going to be a bit more of it's still within the context of the RG2 leadership, of course, just to remind you that the new task force leadership has not even met. So hopefully we're coherent today in some initial impressions, but there will be this meeting as soon as possible, and that will be, of course, Samir from our side, and that would be in April. So we were really in listening mode today, although happy that we were asked to provide some initial perspectives and comments, because we have been a member anyway of RG2 up till today. Charlotte, by the way, is online from WFP, so she will interact with you, because I'll have to leave at 4:30 if you go beyond. Now, so this listening mode, rest assured, and with Charlotte's help on WFP side, we will take to heart what has been said today, and then prepare with Samir, of course, for that first encounter amongst the co-chairs that will then, of course, lead to the first iteration of the interaction with the new task force membership. And then we will chart out, using that framework of the priorities, what we will do going forward in a bit more of a field-leaning perspective. And that will be done in the coming weeks. So this was listening mode today. So rest assured, it has been registered and will be looked at in terms of the note for the record, the recording, and then brought on board as we develop a program of work going forward. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Tanya, any final remarks from your side? When you unmute.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mic to turn on. Thank you. I just think, again, echoing from the last and the kind of the thread of this this conversation from a lot is the role of leadership. I think a reminder that this group was connected very much with the PSEAH work. And if we think back over the last 3 years where this results group 2 has led and the challenges in the PSEAH world, that kind of leadership tone from the top, making sure this is embedded throughout organizations, through what leaders say, has been heard loud and clear. And AAP, I think, has to stay connected and see that same response of AAP is a leadership issue. It also can't be siloed out. So again, Bernadette, just really pleased that you're taking on the co-chair of the protection team, because I think what we can learn so much from how we've kind of the centrality of protection to all our work, and we have to make those same links through. So I think that's going to be a dominant force through this next task force. I think we've made that switch from not just seeing AAP as the add-on and sticking a complaint box in to really a kind of a cultural and learning the lessons as well from the protection work. So thank you. Look forward to having the first conversation with the next co-chairs and thinking how we're going to take this forward. But again, just to part out with a huge appreciation to you both, and thank you so much for the leadership you've given.
Thank you so much. From my side also, thank you, everyone. It has been a huge pleasure to work with all of you, and I have learned so much that I hope that all this learning are coming with me to my new assignment. I'm leaving Geneva, moving to the Central African Republic, so I'll try to strengthen the AAP system there, which I know is very strong, but I will be in the practice doing what we are all preaching here. So thank you so much. Over to you, Bernadette.
Thank you. You give me the last word. I didn't want to be the last one to speak, but I mean, Mary-Chelle, it has been such a delight working with you. You know, coming to your office, having lunch, you know, and discussing and strategizing. Thank you so much. Thank you all as well for your energy and for your support. I take that away with me. I, like Mary-Chelle, learned a lot, so I'm very actually sincerely grateful to all of you and to what we have done together. And yes, count on me and personally, but also on UNHCR to continue to be a very strong advocate of accountability and inclusion. Thank you all very much. We are almost, I am in denial that this is our last meeting, but I look forward to actually trying to attend the first meeting of the new task force. Thank you all very much. Have a good end of the day, and see you soon in as we can all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank
Thanks
you
for all the
all.
work.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
weekend. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.